The new Weapons movie, BRM12000. Well, you're probably so impressed with this short movie that you're wondering how we did it. Huh? You're not? Then why are you still watching this? No, I guess you do want to know. Well, this is just a clip from what will eventually be a feature-length film entitled The Adventures of Big Red Monster and the Saturday Night Music Club. I've always been interested in Hollywood prop making, sound editing, and special effects, movie making. This small project entailed all these elements and took me about a week to put together. Here's a rundown on the equipment and software used to make this short movie. Camera. We used a Panasonic VDR D210 DVD video camcorder on a tripod to do all the shots. Everything was filmed from several different angles over and over again and then pieced together during the editing process. It's a cheap camcorder, but it's the one we have. Lighting. 2 inexpensive shop lights with 100-watt bulbs placed at opposite sides of the area being filmed. Lighting's very important when filming video, especially when you're using a cheap camcorder like the one we have. Props. This was the really fun part. I spent a day looking through the toy sections of several different stores and finally found these at Kmart. After removing the screws from each of them and separating them into 2 halves, I removed all the internal parts, including the orange barrels at the fronts. Then I measured all the dimensions and went shopping at Home Depot for plumbing parts to complete the design. I found 1.5-inch PVC caps that fit the front of the guns. I also found black plastic 1/4-inch beveled faucet washers to use as the particle emitters at the front of the guns where the beams would come out. The next step was to lay out all the pieces and paint them. I used high-gloss black spray paint because I wanted them to have a cool sci-fi feel to them and show the details of their shape when being filmed. I left everything inside to dry overnight. The next day I screwed the halves back together and used super glue to attach the silver end caps and washers to the guns. This is a close-up of the finished product. I also made an interior view version of the prop that will be used in a scene where the genius is interviewed in his workshop. Next, I had to figure out a target for us to shoot at in the movie. I chose a white piece of cardboard because I thought it would show up better when filming at night. I set it up on a target stand made out of 2x4 pieces of wood, and after filming the scene where Judd shoots the target, it had to be altered to look like it had just been damaged by a high-powered ray gun. I cut a jagged hole in the middle and used silver and black spray paint to create the blast marks radiating from the center. Then I taped a couple of lit cigarettes to the back of it under the hole to create smoke. Next, we used a barbecue lighter to burn the edges. As you can see, the top right corner of the hole caught fire pretty good, and we almost couldn't put it out without using water, which we didn't want to do. We were hoping for some burning embers when we filmed the close-up, and luckily we managed to accomplish this. Sound effects. I decided to create the sound effects of the ray gun in my home recording studio using a Yamaha AW16G 16-track digital recording unit on 4 tracks to record the sound. I've always been a big fan of Ben Burtt, the sound editor who works for George Lucas on the Star Wars films. This was an opportunity for me to apply some of the techniques I've heard him talk about in his interviews. On track 1, I combined the sound of a toy Star Trek phaser with a Nova Spirit Police Special ERD, that's a stun gun. I did this using my Sterling Audio ST55 large diaphragm condenser microphone. On track 2, I recorded a funky synth bass sound from my Yamaha PSR E203 keyboard. I then recorded a string sound from the keyboard on track 3. I wasn't happy with the sound levels on track 1, so I recorded the toy phaser again on track 4 by placing the speaker grill of the toy right up against the condenser microphone so it was actually touching. The final step was to mix all 4 tracks onto a stereo track, burn a CD, and download it onto my computer as an MP3 file. The explosion sound at the end of the ray gun shot was from a space explosion sound effect file that I downloaded off the internet, as is the dog barking at the end credit. The music in the beginning of the film is a piece of a song called F.U. Childproof Acoustic Version from my band's CD, Birth of the Big Red Monster. Software. After filming all the scenes, I had to get them on the computer so I could do the visual effects and final editing. I use an HP Pavilion A1330N with an AMD Athlon 64 processor, 1 gigabyte of memory, and a 250 gigabyte hard drive. The camcorder uses 3-inch DVDs as its recording format, so they can just be placed in the DVD drive of my computer to download. Unfortunately, they are downloaded as VRO files, which are not supported by any of the other software programs I'm using. I converted them to AVI files by using a program I found on the internet called AVS Video Converter. Next, I used FX Home FX Lab Pro to do the special effects. The beam was created using the laser effect. The flash was made with a energy weapon muzzle flash effect. Because Judd moves the gun during the shot, I had to move the beam and the flash frame by frame. The orange blast and sparks on the target were a stock particle effect in the program. I then used the laser effect with the color change to yellow and the start and end points on top of each other to create the glowing damage on the target. The software I used to do the final edit was Windows Movie Maker. It's the free version that comes with Windows XP. It's very limited, but once again, it's the program I have. I just got Adobe Premiere Elements and plan to use that in the film. Editing is where a movie is actually made, so it's the most important step in the whole process. When I tried to do the edit, I found that I should have shot more footage. More close-ups of the actors doing their lines from different angles would have made the process easier. I made the still images using Microsoft Paint. I love this program, and I use it to create all kinds of different artwork. When I finished the clip, I saved it in a couple of different formats. My goal was to make it small enough to fit in an email so I could send it to people. Well, that's the end of my behind-the-scenes movie. I hope you found it interesting. I've been playing and recording music for years, but I've always been interested in filmmaking as well. Now that the technology to make movies and do visual effects is so cheap, there's no reason not to. I bet you can't wait until we finish the feature-length film.